Some people would like to say there is no ban. Some people would like to say there is a ban. And some people are not even sure what the ban is about. And there are some people who say that the ban is not such a big deal because you have all the freedom to practice. Back in the 1960s and 70s in USA, America, and I like to use this example because I'm from the US and I experienced this when I was growing up, not directly, not as harshly, but there was desegregation in the 1960s. The desegregation of black people going to school together with white people. Because during that time, black people and white people could not go to schools together, and that would also include brown people, and yellow people, and red people, and people of any color that were not white. They were segregated to different schools. So when desegregation came, and they had to integrate, and all blacks and whites went to the same school, although federally, everybody was allowed to go to school together, there was integration. But the old prejudices, the old thoughts, the people who thought that people who were not white were inferior, or that they didn't deserve to be with whites, and the old prejudices were still there. So although the law was enacted, when the law was enacted, that everyone go to the same school. There's no more segregation based on color. Yet when people went to all white schools, they had rocks thrown at them, they had people threaten them, they had people beat them up, they had people call them names, and it was a long road to integration. It took another 10, 15, 20 years where a lot of black people and people of color were not scorned or hurt or abused in schools that were predominantly white. And people said, well, what are black people complaining about? They get to go to the schools, they're going to the schools, and the law says they can go to the schools. But you see, the law is one thing, people's prejudice is another thing. And people's prejudice came from a law that said blacks can't go to school with whites. People of color couldn't go to school with whites. So that law was in place for many decades in the United States. And so when I went to the school in the early 70s in America, I didn't suffer as much as the black people did back in the 60s and 50s and 1940s. But there was prejudice in the schools, and I did suffer a lot of racial discrimination while I was at school, being called names and being cornered and being abused. That did happen. It wasn't as intense and as bad as the black people had to suffer in the heyday, inverted commas, heyday of segregation. And I'm perhaps oversimplifying what happened, and I don't mean any disrespect to the sufferings of the black people, and even the good white people who thought this was wrong, because not all white people thought that was right either. So I am not trying to disrespect what happened to the black people and the good white people. And but these days in America, if you say segregation of schools of people of color, people would be surprised. You know, like people generation now, they would be like, huh? What are you talking about? Nobody would stand for it. But back in the 60s, 50s, 1940s, 30s, 20s in America, that's how it was for people of color, especially the beautiful black people and white people. So similarly, a lot of people now say, well, there's no ban against Dorje Shugden. You have your own monasteries, you have your own properties, you have your own places, just don't come to our place. Well, that doesn't make sense to me, because why is there our own place? Why is there our own monastery? Why is there our own property when this did exist prior to the ban in 1996? Prior to 1996, all Dorje Shugden practitioners and non-Dorje Shugden practitioners were in the same monasteries, the same hospitals, the same schools, the same government positions, the same kind of meetings, the same gatherings. They all went to the same lamas. But after 1996 was when the ban was introduced and heavily enforced, then suddenly there is a Dorje Shugden monastery and a non-Dorje Shugden monastery. Dorje Shugden people cannot go to the hospitals, cannot go to the schools, cannot have the equal educational opportunities and jobs within the Tibetan community that the non-Dorje Shugden people have. So to say that there's no ban, but if you wish to practice, you can't be with us. That may not be a ban in name, but that is a ban in action, in spirit, and in real life. And I myself am a Dorje Shugden practitioner, and I have suffered taunts, threats, negative reaction, degradation, bias, prejudice. I've suffered all of that only because I am a Dorje Shugden practitioner. And here's a link that goes to an article that I have put in with the Dalai Lama approved this. We put that link in. And you can see the amount of hatred that I experienced simply because I am a Dorje Shugden practitioner. I don't steal, I don't lie, I don't kill, I hold my monk vows, I do my meditations, I do my practice, I teach Dharma, I help people as much as I can, I help animals, I help the homeless, and I do the best I can as an ordinary human being can do. Yet, I'm not allowed to go to a Tibetan hospital, I can't join the monastery that I come from, I cannot go to any of the Dalai Lama's teachings, and it's not that I need to go to the Dalai Lama's teachings, it's that why is it only this group of people cannot go to the Dalai Lama's teachings? That doesn't make sense. So if you say there's a freedom to practice, yet you put people down all the time, and you are violent towards them, and you're saying negative things against them, and you always prejudice against them, and keep everything separate, I don't think that's the freedom to practice. I think that in name, it looks like the freedom to practice, but in actual life, there's a heavy prejudice against Dorje Shugden practitioners, and they have to suffer quite a lot. And this all came from the Tibetan leadership, I'm sorry. This can only be eliminated by the Tibetan leadership because there was no such thing prior to 1996. None. There was no such thing prior to 1996. So therefore, I went to Ganden Monastery, and I entered Ganden Monastery. And when I entered Ganden Monastery, in 1988 January, everything was fine. But in 1996, Ganden Monastery had to split in two. It had to split into Ganden Monastery and Shar Ganden Monastery. And the properties has to be split in two. And the monks cannot meet. So the monks who choose to pray to Dorje Shugden cannot talk and meet with the monks who do not practice Dorje Shugden. That did not exist prior to 1996. So therefore, whether we want to call it a ban, we want to call it not a ban, there is a ban. There is prejudice against Dorje Shugden people. And by me putting up these placards, I am sending a message to the Tibetan leadership in a very respectful manner that this ban should be removed. It is undemocratic. It is unethical. It is not spiritual. And we are biasing a group of people from the fundamental rights of religious practice and also the right to practice in peace without being scorned, feared, abused, or berated. So I'm not fighting for this fundamental right. I deserve it. I'm born with it. And I am asking for everyone not to take it away. So I'm not asking for the right because I'm born with it, but I'm asking for people not to take it away. That what I am born to. Therefore, secondly, when I make these placards and I send a message to the leadership and people who don't like Dorje Shugden practitioners, I don't mean any disrespect to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I don't mean any disrespect to the leadership or anyone, but I'm expressing my pain, my sorrow, my disappointment, and all the sufferings that I and many of us, thousands of us, have endured because of this prejudice against Dorje Shugden practitioners. So I don't think that when we are speaking up against something that is wrong, I do not think that we should insult, put down, or be harsh, or use negative words, or point at faults, or mimic, or hurt the person that we're trying to get to change what is happening. You see, because when they do that to us and they hurt us, we don't have to hurt them back. My practice of Buddhism and my commitment to Buddha's teachings and to karma and cause and effect tells me that even though the ban has caused so much problems for us and for myself, it doesn't give me the right to be rude, to berate, to degrade, to fight back in a manner that's disrespectful, that is not polite, that is not right. Because when we use impolite messages and we start to point at other people's personal, so-called downfalls that we perceive, whether existing or not, then when we start calling other people negative names all the time, what happens is that people start to not see what you are standing up for. They start focusing on your negative speech, your negative representation, and your negative method of bringing the message across. So what happens is instead of them focusing on the message, they are focusing on the messenger. So if I'm going to always put the Dalai Lama down, which I dare not and I would not, and we shouldn't do that to any sentient being, because even if we are in the right, we are not excluded or divorced from karma and its effects. So therefore, if I am bringing this message to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and I'm bringing it to his ministers and people in power, the Tibetan leadership, I am asking them respectfully, as a human, as a Tibetan, as a person that still respects them, that you do other things that are good, but this one thing, can you please look into it? Can you please do something about it? Because it's hurting a lot of people and it's not right. So when we approach people, others, and we want them to create a change, the change we wish to create should not precipitate vulgarities, rudeness, threats, bad language, pointing out their negative points, calling them negative labels. Why? Because we are not divorced from karma. Whatever they say to us has karma, whatever we say to them is karma. And when we start using methods that are rude and impolite, we send a message to the world that we are what they say we are. We are rude. Dorje Shugden's practice does make us bad. Dorje Shugden's practice does make us angry and violent. And that's not true. So since that is not true, we cannot use violent, rude, negative, depredating type of language against the person or people that we are requesting for a change. The reason is we want everyone to please focus on the message and what we are trying to achieve and not so much the messenger. And therefore my method of doing this is the peaceful way, the respectful way, and the way to achieve equality, non-segregation, and removal of the ban is by a way to address the people who are doing this in a respectful, polite, and good manner. And I feel that if we pursue in this type of way, it will have much more effect, it will be more effective, it will be more humanly. We must treat others the way we want to be treated. Even if they're not treating us well, we still must attempt and do our best to treat them back well, because this will send a good message to everyone out there that yes, we are now working towards very much removing the ban against Dorje Shugden and all the pain it has caused, but we do not want to create pain back for the people who has caused us pain. We do not want to create unhappiness or problems for them. We would like them to look at the problems and sit down and discuss and come to a mutual agreement where both parties will win. I repeat, I would like both parties, the Dorje Shugden practitioners and the non-Dorje Shugden practitioners, to gather together and speak and talk politely and drink tea, human to human, intelligent being to another intelligent being. One Dharma practitioner to another. One practitioner who believes in the law of cause and effect speaking to another practitioner who believes in the law of cause and effect. And to respect the law of cause and effect by exercising politeness, kindness, intelligence, wisdom, and debate to learn, not to win. Debate is to learn and not to win. Therefore, I've come out with these placards along with my team. What is written on the placard, some is by myself, some is by my team. Not all, everything is from me, although my name is on it, in order to send a message to everyone who is interested or is involved in this ban in one way or another, or has some ramifications from this ban, to please request the Tibetan leadership politely, again and again, without scourging them, without saying negative things against them, to come to the table and talk. I myself do not wish to go to the table and talk. I'm nobody. I have not much knowledge, but I would like the learned people of the Dorje Shugden practitioners and the learned people of the non-Dorje Shugden practitioners get together and talk, discuss, and come to a good conclusion so the sufferings of the people who are enduring this ban may end. Hence, I've come out with this bunch of placards, and I have spoken up and I've shared. I request His Holiness the Dalai Lama to please look at the sufferings of all beings, not just non-Dorje Shugden practitioners. Please, His Holiness the Dalai Lama to look at the sufferings of all beings and not just non-Dorje Shugden practitioners. We love you. We respect you. We miss you. We would like to request you to send representatives down to talk and to resolve this, because if it continues this way, it's not good for anyone all around. Thank you, Tsem.